Welcome back to the Roundtable. I'm Ostrich Vox, and right off the bat, spoilers for Avengers Endgame and Captain Marvel. If you haven't seen those films, I recommend go checking them out, then coming back here. With that being said, Captain Marvel is by far the strongest and most controversial hero in the MCU thus far. And I know her power level can be greatly debated. What about Thor? But come on, guys. After Endgame, we know she's the most powerful. Despite being propelled as not only the most powerful character, but the leader of the MCU's future, it's clear the Marvel Cinematic Universe and its directors don't quite understand Captain Marvel. I say this because after 2 films in the MCU, it seems as if most of the general audience still has a huge disconnect with the character. Now, this is not a hate video towards Brie Larson of any sort. I think she's fine as Captain Marvel. If anything, her acting is the least of my worries when it comes to this character. Looking at the reception of both Avengers Endgame and Captain Marvel from both hardcore MCU fans and the general audience, while plenty of people enjoyed the character's moments, a large amount of people who saw both films agreed that both her powers and her personality are vague. It's kind of hard to get a read on her. Even when asking a few friends, male and female, on what their thoughts towards Captain Marvel are, I got the following. I think she puts herself on a pedestal, kind of like Thor does. I think her powers are completely different than everyone else's, and that might be a reason she thinks of herself so highly. Most of the time she's just kind of blank-faced and doesn't show real emotions in Endgame. It's clear she has a connection with Nick Fury, but that's about it. Another friend said, she's too powerful, and the human-like Avengers need more power. She's like the get-out-of-the-jail-free card for them. And a third surveillant said, I mean, I knew who she was, but besides her defeating Thanos, there wasn't enough contrast of how much more powerful she really is. Essentially, they get she's powerful, but it's almost like she's too powerful. On top of that, they feel as if she has an ego. And as I stated earlier, they have a hard time getting a read on the character, as the character herself doesn't really display much emotion. And in case anyone was wondering, none of these were hardcore MCU fans. These were friends who were just general moviegoers, but they enjoy Marvel films. They may not keep tabs on every single one, but they saw Captain Marvel and they saw Endgame. That was their takeaway. However, what are some actual examples that show that the writers and directors of the MCU don't quite understand Carol Danvers enough to portray her in a way that the core audience can completely connect with her, understand her motives, and her powers? Well, let's look at her own solo film. While I did have fun with Captain Marvel, the biggest thing that holds the film back, in my opinion, is its attempt at diversifying the origin story, having Carol, and therefore the audience, slowly piece together her past. Carol is desensitized, not from only the Kree Skrull War, but from having her memories repressed and altered by the Kree. There is a moment in the film where we get a glimpse of how she used to behave through photos of her best friend, Maria, but when we finally get the full revelation of her origins, nothing really changes for Carol from a character development standpoint. No emotional breakthrough, catharsis, nothing. She's just kind of angry, but not really. That's not to say she should have been bawling her eyes out. I can't believe I forgot. I don't think that would have made it such a compelling and amazing scene. However, we're gonna come back to this in one moment, because on the same note, her powers never have a huge payoff either. We learn throughout the film her powers are suppressed by a Kree implanted chip, but she can still use photon blast, she can still fly, she has all the works. The chip really just shocks her whenever Yangrog desires. However, once she removes it, she pretty much just does the same powers as before, but kind of faster. I get she's supposed to be unleashed, but I wasn't really sitting in the theater thinking, yes, this is the Captain Marvel I was waiting for. No, that comes in Endgame. Considering her power set is already vague, like Scarlet Witch, due to stepping from an Infinity Stone, we don't have a full grasp on just how amazing this scene should be. However, Scarlet Witch had scenes in Ultron that establishes her powers, including mind manipulation onto the Avengers. She has telekinesis, she uses force fields. How could we forget the iconic scene where she rips out Ultron's heart, which I still find kind of dumb because why does a robot have a heart? But it was still, oh my god, just amazing. Carol, on the other hand, has photon blasts. You see, I feel as if Carol Danvers is missing one crucial thing. The film Captain Marvel as a whole is missing the leap of faith scene. And yes, I am referring to the leap of faith from Spider-Verse. The scene where Miles realizes he is Spider-Man, where he fully comes into his own identity as the web-slinging hero. What made this scene so well was that not only did Miles' character arc come full circle, but he also got a grasp on his powers. Throughout the film, his powers just kind of came and went. He clearly didn't have control of them. And his only time web-slinging prior, well, as Gwen said, he had potential. I feel as if maybe Captain Marvel could have possibly worked better if there was a scene after she learned of her past, before the Kree arrived, where she owns her own identity. Yes, I know there's a scene of her standing up as a child, teenager, adult, and I think that scene is mwah. But maybe if her powers were out of whack, or she didn't have a good grasp on them, then maybe when she removes that chip and goes completely bananas on the Kree, we as an audience would have been like, oh my god, she finally has it under control. She's standing up for herself, she owned her identity, and she has complete control of her powers. This girl is awesome. But I digress. Moving into Endgame, Captain Marvel only plays a role in the beginning and the end of the film, despite being Fury's ace in the hole, which I found kind of disappointing. Now, this is generally perceived as a good thing, since Endgame serves to close out the original 6 Avengers, plus Rhodey, but Ant-Man, Nebula, and Rocket were directly involved in the main plot, and they didn't detract from the original 6, so I don't know if giving Carol a larger inclusion would have impacted the story significantly. To me, I now have a different takeaway, that Carol had limited involvement in the film, as the Russos didn't fully understand her character or her powers, which is punctuated by their statement after the film released on why Tony had to be the one to snap his fingers, claiming that Thor was too out of shape, Tony was the closest one to get the gauntlet off Thanos, and that they weren't too sure of how powerful Captain Marvel was in relation to being able to snap her fingers and surviving. That right there shows that they don't fully understand her character. This lack of understanding makes her hard to implement into the film. Another thing lacking from Captain Marvel in Endgame that was present for the rest of the newer heroes, or at least those the Russos never played with before, in both Endgame and Infinity War, is a reintroduction. With Infinity War, we have a reintroduction to Doctor Strange that shows how he plays off a character of his own franchise, Wong, and his role in the MCU to protect this reality and the Time Stone. Thanks to his fight with Thanos later in the film, we also get a clear understanding of his powers. We see just how powerful he is, but that doesn't mean he's a guaranteed victory. Not to mention, Strange himself has a pretty neat arc from Infinity War to Endgame. The Guardians all have moments that highlight their personalities, and for Mantis and Groot, their abilities, since the other Guardians rely more on their skills than harboring superpowers. For Carol in Endgame, she rescues Tony, which I didn't mind at all, but her introduction is more or less saying she's the key to defeating Thanos because she's strong. That's it. She helps pin down Thanos in the farm, but nothing in the first act of the film gives you a grip on her powers or personality. At most, we know she's a protector of all planets in need, which is more of a vague motivation than anything. Jumping to the third act, Carol returns in the final battle with a very dynamic entrance, but unlike all of our other heroes, she's lacking one thing throughout this final battle: weakness. Without the chip restraining her, she's a one-man army, but since she lacks a personal or physical weakness, she almost completely serves as the obligatory fireworks light show. The only time she's remotely injured is when Thanos uses the Power Stone to get her off of him. Up until that point, we see how powerful she is, even casting a force field of energy that prevents Thanos from headbutting her. But just like her solo film, it's mainly just becoming Super Saiyan. But even with that comparison of Dragon Ball, Goku has a Kamehameha, Vegeta has his Final Flash and Gallic Gun, Gohan has his Masenko. Photon blasts aren't enough of a distinguishing ability, especially in the midst of a giant CGI army battle. You can distinguish Spider-Man's webs, Doctor Strange's magic, Captain America's shield, Iron Man's various tech, even Scarlet Witch's magic as it's a red mist. But when there's already lasers and explosions back and forth in a battle, how much does a photon blast stick out? However, out of both Captain Marvel and Endgame, there's one moment that seems to have stuck with fans and the audience as a whole: Carol and Peter Parker's brief exchange. In a concise manner, it conveys a lot about her personality by doing so little. And it's her putting a kid on the same level as herself, which also grants Peter recognition for being a superhero. This larger-than-life deity taking the time to learn his name and treating him with respect. With other scenes in the film, people got the impression that she looks down on the Avengers, that she has little value in her home planet, having no emotional reaction to seeing it devastated. I didn't get that takeaway, especially because because she hasn't been on Earth in decades, so she doesn't have much investment in the planet as a whole, but I do understand how anyone else would have that takeaway. Here, however, with Peter, a kid of all people, not to talk down Spider-Man, you know that's my favorite hero, no disrespect Peter, please forgive me, we see that she sees anyone fighting a good fight on her level, even if she's aware of her power. That's a moment that helps the audience get acquainted with the idea that she's the future. She's a leader. She's someone who will get the job done, but won't forget the people who helped her along the way. A key moment to understanding Captain Marvel that was missing prior. And of all characters, I'm beyond glad it was Spider-Man. Seriously, Peter deserves that. Now this next part is more of a nitpick than anything, and it could be due to when these films were written and shot, but why wasn't Maria mentioned at all? It was weird Scott didn't mention any of his friends, but we had his moment with Casey. Carol was distressed over seeing Fury was gone, but didn't bother to follow up to her closest friend on Earth, at least on screen. I get they had to have the plot moving along, but if you're selling us on this character, we need more of those emotional beats. We need to see that Carol is, well, vulnerable. For as exciting as Phase 4 can be, if Carol will be the new face of the MCU, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. As it stands, it certainly feels a bit strange where Peter Parker is a better contender, maybe even T'Challa. I like Captain Marvel. I think her powers are cool, but they're so vague and unclear. It's hard to get a read on her. Walking out of Captain Marvel, I thought, well, you know the Russos, they're gonna work their magic and we're gonna walk out of Endgame not only understanding Carol, but loving her. Yet after Endgame, I had some friends who, again, I just want to emphasize are female, who really didn't care for Carol or just straight up didn't like her in the film, which definitely should not have happened. But with all of this said, this is where I turn the conversation over to you guys. What do you think? Am I just crazy, or do the directors and writers of the MCU have a serious disconnection with Carol? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, or tweet your thoughts at Roundtable Vids. And for more of my own thoughts, you can find me at MikeCatSU. We're also on Instagram. Help the Roundtable grow by either becoming a member of this channel or supporting us over at Patreon. Link in the description. If you enjoyed this video, please throw it a like and subscribe to the Roundtable for more great cartoon content and Marvel content. We're trying to do a lot more Marvel content, but you know, we just need the support to keep doing it. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have an awesome day. CabooseJr signing out.